So these next few chapters are gonna be featuring Laura. Well, at least she's far from the worst diva we've had to deal with in these islands. We return to this book seemingly right after Laura achieved pre-curedom, and of course her human form, aka she got her legs. Then again, the mermaid was also going to take full advantage of her new appendages and the fact that she could run out in public. In fact, I think she was already making arrangements to join Squid Girl's plans to invade the surface world. And everyone gave the most appropriate reactions, with Minori giving the best throughout this book, really. Anyway, in a bit of a change up from the source material, we cut over to our heroines working their local summer festival rather than one at their school. Thus, they weren't going to do makeup or put on a play and just sell some damn food, in their case shaved ice, a very islander thing to do. I'm not going to use the T word again. However, it didn't take long before they ran out of frozen water, leaving one kid needing some cheese to go with all of his wine. Or that would have been the case had Laura not dramatically appeared to save the day with the holy lights and everything. Hey Jesus, could you stop simping for the fish girl? But yeah, she decided to make an ice dash, with Asuka quickly falling behind. She suggested they take a scenic route, which Laura was more than willing to go with, as probably more than giving that kid his precious sugary snow, she wanted to make good use of her new legs, as, to be fair, it was a long time coming for her. After all, just having these sorts of interactions had been deprived from her ever since she started to become more acquainted with the surface world, in particular, all the activities she couldn't do with her friends. Hell, if the Body Switch episode is canon with this book, then she would likely still have a lot of pent-up desires, having gotten just a taste of bipedalism in Minori's body. This is another example of an episode that really should have been in the series proper, or at the very least, had gotten a little more focus, as opposed to just having Laura mostly give up on really using her legs after her little swimming fail. Anyway, they managed to make it to the ice factory and bought another block. However, I guess the thing about magically acquired appendages is that they don't automatically come with the most fortified of muscles. Likely not even realizing what a sprained ankle was, she tried to keep going even after Asuka offered her a lift. Because for her, experiencing the freedom of being on the same playing field as all of her friends was the absolute most important thing to her. Really good stuff here that I kind of wish had gone on a little longer, but we've only got a limited number of pages to work with, so they kind of had to quickly wrap things up with the rest of the characters just kind of coming out of nowhere to help. Granted, I am willing to overlook this slightly rushed conclusion, mostly because of Minori just coming out on a cart just to support the cooler, even though they could just put the cooler on the cart. But I guess Minori just didn't want to walk because she had even weaker legs than the mermaid who just got them. Seriously, come on, girl. Anyway, the chapter ended with the kid finally getting his shaved ice. Surprised he was willing to wait that long after whining so much. And Laura nicely expressed her appreciation for finally being able to interact with her friends like this, and they enjoyed the festival's fireworks together. Oh, and then she really started to talk like a teenage girl of the surface world, as she was planning on buying a whole lot of shoes. I do not envy anyone who has to foot those bills. We followed this up with more of a group adventure as the Tropical Club went on a hike into the mountains. I say more of a group adventure because in just this one page, the Kamikitas managed to get a lot of character across. Obviously, Manatsu was leading the charge, actually busting out a full-on flag for her club. Who'd she commission to make that? But we also got Minori getting out her tablet, saying that she was going to catch up on her reading, Asuka pointing out the practicality of hiking to this particular spot, and Sango raving about the negative ions in the area. Yeah, I know that last one sounds more like something Minori would say, but from what I've read, negative ions are supposed to have a really good effect on beauty and skincare, so it does make sense for the fashionista of this group to talk about it. Also, yes, this stupid book made me look up beauty tips. I hope you people appreciate what I do for you. And yeah, nothing much for Laura here, but I think she got enough time in the last chapter and is gonna get even more in the next. Regardless, a good showing of the contrasting personalities of our heroines that really highlight their different priorities. Unfortunately, that didn't include homework for Manatsu. Yeah, may as well pencil in for a study group with about 80% of the Smile team. The team managed to settle down for a little picnic, but was quickly interrupted by a sudden rain shower out of nowhere. Sounds like a day ending in Y in these islands. Of course, being Lil Miss overly positive, Manatsu tried to downplay them being caught in a nasty shower as though it could be fun. As a result, and everyone else being unable to come to a consensus on how to confront their situation, they ended up trying some bone conduction.
Yeah, obviously I'm not into sports, but last I checked, you're supposed to do that with your helmets on.
Fortunately, best girl Asuka took charge, and after leading them in a breathing exercise, a very good call for reducing tension and unifying everyone, they were able to come up with some main countermeasures based around their respective strengths, and even reconciled some of their previous ideas together. Good stuff that, like in the actual anime, showed that these girls are one of the more effective Precure teams in recent years. Well, for the most part, Laura actually said that she was just gonna stand by and direct everyone, because we really have to play up how everyone has to stand for this Sardine. Whatever, they used the club flag as a makeshift rain shelter, and of course the chapter ended with a big rainbow.
Oh, my arteries are getting clogged with all that cheese.
The following chapter, as I hinted at earlier, was another Laura chapter, where after hearing her friends exposit about their excitement over the coming autumn, she decided to pull a George Costanza and tried to find an autumn of Laura. Even though in his case it was the summer of George, and autumn is just kind of, well, autumn.
Yeah, this might be more of a cultural thing, and hell, I live on an island where the weather and temperature are pretty much the same year round, but am I the only one who finds autumn to be the most boring of seasons?
I mean, with winter and summer, you have the extreme cold and heat respectively that make them unique. Meanwhile, spring tends to be the most colorful yet comforting season, hence why in Japan it marks the beginning of the new school years.
And yet, autumn was just always kind of there in my opinion.
Now obviously, this chapter is going to provide some decent arguments for why they, and I think specifically the authors, like the season.
But still, what are y'all's opinion on the season? Feel free to let me know in the comments.
Fortunately, Laura didn't start off her season by building a recliner with a built-in fridge, but instead decided to hang out with each of her teammates and see how each of them enjoyed their respective autumns. For Minori, it was predictably enough, as even Laura pointed out, all about reading. Though in her case, she enjoyed it especially in the autumn because of the not too cold, yet long nights where you could just leave the window open, making for supposedly the most comforting reading time, which I guess makes sense and sounds environmentally friendly and all that.
Though, personally, I just turn on all of my lights and let the AC blast.
On that same note, Asuka found it optimal conditions for exercising in between the hottest and coldest times of the year, which, yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, personally, I tend to exercise more during the hot summers, but having been to Japan during their summers, yeah, that's a little too hot to the point hydration is a constant need.
More importantly, at least it's well after a really overblown sporting event that also interrupted your show's broadcast.
Of course, Sango was all about the cosmetics, and said that for whatever reason, autumn tended to be when manufacturers released most of their new products. They didn't explain why, and I'm sure there's some sort of real-life reason behind it, but for this book, I think the Kamikitas just wanted another excuse to put Laura in cute makeup. Surprisingly, Manatsu had the most practical argument for why autumn was great, in that it was the time of the year when a lot of good foods were in season. Moreover, and this is probably the most interesting thing to consider, her mother explained how we tend to be a lot hungrier during the autumn, likely due to our genes still having traces of our ancestors who loaded up right before the cold winters hit and food was more scarce.
Honestly, that was the only argument I needed to really appreciate the season more. I mean, I'll take any excuse to eat more turkey in November.
And all of this, I think mostly the food, won Laura over and had her dancing over the season, ending this nice little chapter about appreciating all the little things brought upon by the seasons. Though the real highlight of this chapter was, surprisingly enough, Kroon of all things. Yeah, throughout this book, the little seal, aside from their first page, had some decent faces, with some like this being outright hilarious. In general, I think the twins just have a thing for deadpan fairies, good taste. And even managed to rub that off on, and let's be honest here, one of the most pointless toy adverts in this entire franchise. Anyway, moving on to the last chapter we'll cover for today, our heroines decide to check out a flower expo in their neighboring town. Said expo was taking place near the end of October, meaning Halloween was just around the corner. And while we know Manatsu would end up loving the holiday, Asuka did rightfully point out that she was also deathly afraid of ghosts and the paranormal. In response, she did somewhat justify her stance by pointing out that she can at least distinguish between real and fake to a degree, and just wanted to have fun with everyone. Granted, that didn't stop her from being on edge, as even the sound of a loud sprinkler set her off. And possibly to try and get her mind off of it, she gave chase to a dragonfly. As a result, she got separated from her friends and had a little encounter.
No. I'm pretty sure it's something far less sterile than that.
But yeah, if you couldn't guess by that distinctive silhouette, this was indeed a tie-in for the Heartcatch crossover film that came out near the end of October 2021. Thus, the two lead cures met without the need of their resident blues stirring up trouble. And while I don't think Tsubomi is ever all that easily frightened by ghosts, she did tend to be easily influenced, so when Manatsu started to talk about ghosts, they began to see a normal flower as frickin' Biollante.
Oh, come on. You don't think that weeds like that are all that scary? Okay, now that was legit terrifying.
Of course, their respective teams soon arrived and tried to cure their not-so-fearless leaders of their shared phobia, with it even resulting in them seeing Erika as a ghost, even though we all know she's a werewolf. This led to some pretty good interactions with the color-matching pairings as the purples and yellows brainstormed and exhibited their different mindsets on how to fix this problem. Sango focused more on the emotional aspects, Yuri more on the inner spirit, Itsuki more on them needing some discipline, and Minori just being plain logical and all that. Again, really good writing that shows that the Kamikitas get these characters.
In hell, at least Itsuki got to say more here than she did in that movie.
Laura suggested that they hit them with something tropical shining, leading of course to Erika asking what the hell that was. And in a bit of a humorous bit, she quoted Manatsu and even reused a shot from the very first chapter of this manga. Good callback. Anyway, the tropical shining they ended up going with was Erika singing maybe a Precure song. These lyrics do look kind of familiar, but I couldn't match it up with the stuff I looked up. Feel free to let me know if I'm really missing something. I probably am. Anyway, it just kind of worked, and the two leads were rejuvenated rather easily.
Barely an inconvenience.
No, and they also kind of offhandedly realized that they were all Precure. Nothing really struck up a conversation about it, it just kind of happened. Yeah, unfortunately, these were the last 2 pages of the chapter, so we got a pretty rushed conclusion, which is a shame because again, the twins were doing a great job giving these teams interactions on par with, and in some cases, even better than the tie-in movie. Hell, Manatsu didn't even get to learn who that ghost with the verbal tick was. No, well, at least we ended on a good Erika gag, which is always a plus in my books. Seriously, forget knockoff Elsa, these two needed more interactions in the film.
But for now, I think we'll once again close this manga, as while that certainly wasn't the strongest ending to go out on, it was still a crossover with Heartcatch, which is somewhat climactic inherently. And as always, I want to thank y'all for watching as we alternate between the smaller and bigger projects. There is a lot more on the way, but we just want to get a little more organized first. Regardless, look forward to it. Until then though, farewell for now my friends, and yep, this is typical. Alright, just go open this guy up and oh come on, I just opened it!